welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. Little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP and you're going to get 10% off your order. With that code FNP at simbody.com, you're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks ? Kicks.
Oh boy, and we're back, and we're set for UFC Fight Night Kattar versus Allen, the 11 fight set, and I can't wait for it. Thanks so much for joining in with Fight Night Picks ? Kicks. Ray Quinones, Darren, Starsmith 77 Porter, you still have that very long handle over there. Haven't changed it. Fluffy Stuff HT, we got first, last. Doughboy Paul is hanging out, and Matt.
Above, of course.
Oh, she can lose. Somebody's still pushing them ads, huh? LOL. Doesn't want to see the boys make any money off of the ads. So thank you very much, but they definitely work very well. And Ray Quinones forgot the SimBody. Get you one. Chandler Witt saying, what's good, boys? Listen, I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Darren saying, you guys remember my prediction about Islam versus Oliveira? That's the way to go. It was definitely a very interesting card that we had last weekend.
A great
but
one.
This weekend, you folks know what was up. We said it at the start of the week when we threw out that full card, 9-fight set. The fact that, hey, we're going to have some changes. Some fights are going to be added. Carlos Mota, the LFA flyweight champ, steps in on short notice on Monday to take on Cody Durden. On Tuesday, it's announced that Christian Rodriguez found a new opponent. Garrett Armfield is out. Joshua, with arms wide open, Weems steps in on short notice. Now, Rodriguez, we touched on it, missed weight on Dana White's Contender Series, so they didn't sign him straight to the UFC. Joshua Weems also missed weight on Contender Series, and then he lost. He got finished by Fernie Garcia, ends up fighting outside of the UFC, gets a chance on short notice, misses weight at 139.5. So we have a lot to say for sure on this card. But again, I just want to thank everybody for hanging out, because this is one of those fun cards. Fluffy Stuff's hanging out from North Bay, Ontario. I wonder what the weather's like in North Bay. It's starting to cool off here in New Brunswick.
Weird place to hand it off to, but it is a really fun fight card ahead of us. I think we have a lot of fights from top to bottom of the card that you can get excited for. Two, let's just call them lesser fight night cards leading up to that pay-per-view that we had last weekend. But this is one of those cards that, again, like I said, has fights that anybody can get excited for. And I love the main event. I cannot stop talking about it. For Calvin Kattar, he's fought a lot of guys in the top 15 at this point in his career. And this is, like all those other fights, a very important one. Because if Kattar loses this, is he going to have that many more opportunities against some of those top dogs? And on the flip side, for Arnold Allen, he's kind of new to these top contenders in the featherweight division, so big opportunity for both guys. I just think it's a major storyline for both of them. If Arnold Allen is able to win, it's kind of like what we say, it cuts kind of a year off of his career. It helps him jump to the front of that queue against some of the bigger names in the featherweight division. But again, for Kattar, he really wants to kind of maintain his place in the division and prove that he still is one of the top names at 145.
Well, Matt Trovelin's hanging out. Clay's hanging out. Tyler Zaraski talking about shadow boxing. And then we look at, of course, First, Last, and Rebel Reseller hanging out. We're going to throw it on over to our fight of the night screen. And nothing's really changed on this one, but I will say, out of the selections, we have the co-main event, Tim Means, Sagan Max Griffin, and I'll tip the hand right now. I'll just go straight to it. The main event.
Exactly.
You touched on it. Calvin Kattar, Arnold Allen. I feel like at the end of this week, now that we have those two fights added to the start of the card, we might have a sleeper surprise of a fight in the night. But when you do consider these two fights, Matt, Kattar versus Allen, Griffin versus Means, they're fights that people can get excited about. And I threw it out there, and I'll just go right back to Means versus Griffin. I threw this one out there, said it was going to be a banger in the YouTube community tab, And then every single comment was negative around it, and I just wasn't having it. I didn't understand it. I think this is a great fight.
This is what I mean. I would say the main event and the co-main event are both very important, but for very different reasons. Tim Means and Max Griffin are both trying to get some of those other action type of opponents to wind down their careers. And I know Max Griffin's a little bit younger, but you know what I mean. Neither one of these guys is looked at to be a future top contender or anything, but they can offer really promising prospects a really difficult fight on their way up. They can have more of these potential fight of the night style fights with a lot of other sort of aging veterans in the division. So I do think this co-main event is a very important fight, even though we don't look at either one of these fighters and think, wow, their next opponent is going to be like a Shavkat Rakhmonov or a Khamzat Chimaev. But in the main event, again, it's important for very different reasons. I don't know if the winner of that is going to find themselves in a title eliminator, just because we know how deep this division is, and really anybody in the top 15, it feels like, could have the belt, if not the pound. Well, I mean, pound for pound number one's the champ right now, so it's gonna be tough to take it from Volkanovski. But it's different than like 125 in the female division, where the Valentina Shevchenko is so much better than everybody else, and it feels like that's such a big mountain to climb. At 145, it does feel like we are starting to get some of these more refined contenders to go after Volkanovski. So hopefully in this little hiatus that he takes up to 155 and challenging for Islam Makhachev, it does allow another contender to sort of replace him for the time being, and that creates a bit of a super fight in the future when Volkanovski does move back down.
It's definitely very, very awkward when you do stack it up at 145, and you have your opportunity to cast your vote in the poll up there in the chat, and right now 62% have Calvin Kattar to get the win. We're definitely going to be talking about the polls that we do have on our Instagram story every single Saturday before question mark kicks. You get the opportunity to throw your picks out there. We'll talk about them as we rip through this card. And if this is your first time with Fight Night Picks question mark kicks, A, we thank you. B, make sure you toss a like on to the video. Get this ball a-rolling. And Matt, we touched on it to start this video. I mean, realistically, you start at the bottom. Now we're here. Christian Rodriguez taking on Joshua Weems with arms wide open. Weems in on short notice as of Tuesday night. Missed weight for this fight at 139.5 pounds. And I get it, like, you take the fight on short notice, you slag the guy a little bit for missing the weight, but I did see somebody really early on in the comment section kind of touch on the fact that they like Weems at a plus 300, don't understand why Rodriguez is so heavily favored. And I think the weight miss has a little bit to do with it, but it's just more or less the defensive lapses in Weems striking. And that's not to say that he's not a striker. You look at his record, plenty of finish wins, 100%. Mostly all by submission, and he is such a slick grappler. I mean, you talk about people, you know, pulling guard, having success off the bottom. He has a very well-rounded out MMA grappling skill set. So 100%. I really do like to see that. Weems' offensive takedowns aren't the snazziest. He's got really snappy leg kicks, keep them going throughout the fight. Kicks to the head, kicks to the body too, slows down his opponents. But his boxing can get him caught a little bit. So I know the record's very, very shiny. It's 11-2 right now. Christian Rodriguez with the loss in his debut to Jonathan Pierce. I have more questions, not necessarily about Weems, even though he missed weight, but with Rodriguez being like a teenager training at Rufus Sport all the way up till you're about 24, losing a fight and then going, well, better go train at the gym that the guy that beat me trains at, Jonathan Pierce. He's a fight ready for this one.
And that's always one of those shifts that can either have massive positive benefits on your career or be a huge detriment to you. We don't really know until we see you in that first fight. So I agree with you. That is a massive storyline heading into this. But I think for Rodriguez, this is a good matchup for him to just kind of reset after the Pierce fight. We talked about that a lot. Like, Jonathan Pierce is not an easy fight for anybody to have in their UFC debut. He's a well-rounded fighter. He can hit with some pop on his shots. Of course, we know his offensive grappling is very high level. So I think for Rodriguez, that was just a big stumbling block for him to have in his debut. I think this fight against Weems is a great readjustment for him, though. I do worry about Weems, especially with his defensive striking on the feet. We've seen him get clipped before in his career, and I could see Rodriguez having a lot of success on the feet. But to those people who are a little worried about the odds, I do agree with them. I do think the odds are like heavily skewed one way in this matchup. But at the end of the day, we don't pick the fights based on the odds on this channel. We pick them based on who we think is going to win. And I do think Rodriguez is more likely to win in this matchup.
I mean, Rodriguez is a pretty big favorite, sitting around a minus 400. Weems around a plus 300. So do with that what you will. Donnie Dimes saying, what's up, boys? Donnie Dimes, appreciate you tuning in. 73% of the fans at Fight Night Picks going with Rodriguez to get the win over Weems. There's always these debuting fighters that come in with a full head of steam. They surprise. Weems very well could be one of those fighters. I'm really eager to see how he makes out, not just in this fight, but continuing on. Will he be a one-and-done type of guy, couple of fights, or will he stick around? So I think it's going to be a lot of fun while this fight lasts. But again, The odds are very far apart. Don't see a whole lot of value in Christian Rodriguez coming in here looking for his first UFC win. Matt, we have our next fight. Carlos Mota taking on Cody Durden. We're just turning
split on this, I believe.
Burning.
Weren't we?
Yeah, we were actually. So for Carlos Mota, the guy is a sniper with his striking, and I don't like the nickname of the sniper. We had one last weekend, if I'm not mistaken. This weekend, Mota Tzizil taking on Cody Durden of no fixed nickname. And for Durden, obviously had the bulk of his amateur success when he was training out of American Top Team Atlanta. Had that night where his kickboxing, MMA, and boxing, winning fights, just going buck wild.
Weird.
Quitting his job. Now he's full-time in the old UFC. He might tell his friends that he's a UFC fighter. He trains UFC, but he really does.
Do you think he says I'm like a top 25 fighter in the division? They only rank the top 15, so you can get away with saying stuff like that. We don't need to talk about who I'm talking about.
Tapology ranks me in the top 50.
Wow, that's cute.
Out of B, pal. But for Cody Durden, 2-2-1 in the UFC. First fight, taking on Chris Gutierrez. Has the draw. 10-8 first round for Durden. And then 10-9, 10-9. He's got nice wins. He's got weird losses. Exactly. He beats Arichi Long. Kind of gas tank, evades him a little bit in the third round. Lets Arichi Long back into the fight. And then if you saw the second round for Arichi Long, well, you've got a little bit of a puzzling decision. But he left the judges out of it his last time out. Surprised it wasn't a performance bonus. He sent JP Bays to the Shadow Realm. That was JP's 8th knockdown in 3 fights. It was absolutely wild. But Matt, in this matchup for Mota, he is a great striker. He has really good takedown defense, so I see this fight as being very, very competitive.
It is.
And honestly, I know you went with Durden and I went with Mota, but I wouldn't be surprised if Durden goes out there and gets the win either.
Oh, and vice versa. I think this is a great matchup for both athletes because they both have very obvious ways where they can have success, and they both have kind of that defense that you're going to really bring up questions about. Because for Mota, if he can use his takedown defense to just keep this fight in the center of the cage, use his striking on the back foot, but also be aggressive with it as well, I think he can have a lot of success with that. But I think if Durden can especially get some of those takedowns early in the fight, put some of those question marks in the back of Mota's mind, really start making him reach on the takedown attempts, I think that might open up the striking for Durden. Because the thing about Cody Durden that I guess gives you most promise in his future, but it also gives you a little bit of hesitation in picking him in a lot of his fights, is he's always going to look good in one area you don't expect him to look good in, and he's probably going to look poor in another area that you think he's going to look positive in. And I just think for Durden, it is a matter of really putting it all together. And I know there's a lot of fighters in the UFC that you can say that about. Some fighters at the top of the division that you think, oh wow, if they can only just sort of refine this one skill, they would be able to compete for a title. For Durden, of course, he's not at that level, but I like his wrestling in some spots. I like his offensive striking if he can really open up with his wrestling, because it does put enough question marks, I think, in his opponent's mind to where, like I said, they start reaching for the takedown attempts, and it does open up some of the power he has in his hands. But I think this fight really does hinge on if he can or cannot get the offensive takedown.
VT hanging out in the chat. Elizabeth Morse, need a parlay from you today, Craig.
What's up, VT?
It's not gonna happen. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. But Chad, the UFC dad, what grade would you give Mota? Well, I don't think they give grades out in school anymore, so that one's tough. I'm gonna go out of 5. I'm going to say 3.5 to 4. I think that's fair. We don't know how good he is against the top level competition. And with my guy, Askar Askarov, going out and just finding himself in the world, it really is tricky. So when I do look at this one, Matt, I like Mota because I've seen good takedown defense in the past. I've seen him fight a decent level of competition. You go down through it, you look at the last loss was to Charles Johnson. He gets finished in the championship rounds. But he looked really good in the first 3 rounds, and even in the 4th round. They were slugging it out. He was defending takedowns. He was able to get back up out of some bad positions. And Mota's best move, Durden's not going to do it. If you land any body kicks against Carlos Mota, or you go to try them, he grabs every single one and throws you down to the mat, and then he gets in top position. He's got a really good guard, so I do like Carlos Mota in the matchup. We didn't have odds when we made the video at the start of the week.
I'm curious to see what they're at.
Yeah, and I don't know where they are, so let's see. I know this is terrible for television. There we go. Carlos Mota is the favorite, coming in around a -1. Open +125, -170 right now. Durden coming in +140 or thereabouts as the underdog. So maybe there's a good slice there if you do like the underdog. 61%, 62% now of the fans at Fight Night Picks on Instagram going with Mota to get the win. But again, for me, I can see somebody like a Durden getting a win, just going for the takedown. Mota fought just about 2 months ago, taking on a good fighter over with the LFA in Rizvan Abuyev, and then he finished him. Crazy left-handed knockout, just dropped him. he was out to sleep out. So that was good. And a
Do
good
I
fighter,
resemble
too.
a young Steven Adams right now? I see that in the comment section. Big fan of Steven Adams, but
If Steven Adams, like, gave up protein.
I was going to say, he's notoriously known as, like, the strongest man in the NBA, and I'm far from it.
Yikes. So your pick is Durden here, and I'm going with Carlos.
But it should be a fun fight early on the card. This is one that you're
Yeah.
going to want to watch.
I'm looking forward to it. One that I have no idea what
At
to
all.
expect. And to me, it's one of those fights where you just kind of pop and popcorn the heck out of it. You've got Chase Hooper taking on Steve Garcia. Steve Garcia is a Julian Lane fighter. The guy bangs. And his last time out against Mahashata, he walked into a right cross and got dropped. And then he got back up and they parried a little bit. And then he got dropped by the exact same right cross. And I just said Mota flatlined Rizvan Abuyev in Mota's last fight. Steve Garcia got given a pillow and he went out under the stars. So for Steve Garcia, got finished there. He got dropped a couple of times against Charlie Ontiveros, whose UFC run was less than stellar, but it was the axe kicks, the shots, and then Garcia was able to take the fight to the mat, finish him from top position. And for Garcia, he's decently well-rounded. He hits pretty hard. His chin's a little suspect, but he kind of brings his hands down when he goes into a lot of the flurries. And Chase Hooper, other than the fact that he's gotten better at pushing forward on the feet, getting mad and landing his offensive shots, he's pretty good. But I see these two guys, if Chase Hooper goes into the pocket like that, he could get dropped. We saw him dropped on Dana White's Contender Series. We saw Alex Caceres have a lot of success there. Hooper, when he backs up and when he gets flurried and when he kind of tenses up, he really does drop his hands.
And he backs straight up. It's not on an angle.
No, and for the height of him, these are two bigger guys in the division, but drop and the pull back. Chase Hooper, we know how good his ground game is, and I think a second camp out of Upstate Karate will help him in this one as far as the striking offense and possibly defense. But Donnie's saying Garcia looked really rough at weigh-ins for what it's worth. I thought it was what it was, but looking at this one, Garcia, first fight at 145 in quite some time, and for Chase Hooper, making a home here.
Big guy for the weight class, though, still.
Ranting out that man body, as they would say. So, Matt, who do you have in this one?
I think it is an interesting fight because for Garcia, even in the areas where he can have the most success, it does make him susceptible to getting hit by the big shot. And the thing about Garcia, I don't think he has a bad chin by any means. I just think the way he fights makes him very open to big shots. So maybe that does mean he has a bad chin, but you know what I mean? It's not the fact that the shots hitting him are soft. It's just that he's open to get hit by the big shots.
It's like heavyweight MMA at lightweight.
Exactly. That's a good way of describing it. But the thing about Hooper is his striking offense does leave him very open to be hit by those counter shots too. So Garcia is going to have an opportunity to land that big shot on the outside. I just think if we look at the more well-rounded game of the two, you have to look at Chase Hooper. Much more effective on the ground, much more dangerous on the mat, and he has the higher probability of getting a finish if the fight does hit the ground for any period of time. I think it might look ugly too until it does look good for Hooper. I can see him getting tired, maybe pulling guard in some spots, you know, some of the things that might not reflect well in the judge's eyes, but things that for Hooper will lead him to get a finish in this fight, because that's the one spot where I do think he's going to have a big advantage. I think if it does hit the mat, if he does get in the top position, he is such a big submission threat at this weight division that I could see him cinching up an arm or a neck perhaps of Garcia and getting a finish that way.
He's never submitted anybody in the UFC, Chase Hooper. I mean,
I
you
know,
look
but
at
you
it
still
like
look at his ground game at a very high level. And
he submitted Peter Barrett, whose UFC run didn't go all that well, back with Cage Titans. But when I look at the odds here, Hooper open to minus 185. He's a minus 322, so somebody likes him. I don't.
That many people put money on him.
Steve Garcia open plus 160. He's a plus 255. Kattar saying this fight isn't going the distance. Globros with the super chat. Here's a cut for you guys. Help me build an awesome parlay last week. Always love the research and work you guys put in. Globros, thank you. You know what?
We appreciate that, Globros.
While there's this many people here, I'm getting excited for this card that we have next weekend. There's a lot of fights on it. Rodriguez versus Lemos, or Marina Rodriguez, rather. And of course, you have Neil Magny.
When you first said that, I was looking at Dana Rodriguez. It was like, what the heck's going on?
You have Dana Rodriguez taking on Neil Magny. That should be a fun one. Jaden saying Hot Rod Woo. That should be a fun fight. So thank you for that super chat. But with Chase Hooper, Steve Garcia, I like Hooper. And it's more of a fade on Steve Garcia. But again, as I said at the start of this, it's pop and popcorn for me.
100%, but I do like Hooper in the matchup.
Right, so we'll move on to the next fight, Matt. We have Joseph Holmes, the ugly man, taking on Jun Young Park. And Matt, for Jun Young Park, like, I'm fighting for my mother life. He's in a bad spot right now. And it kind of sucks because I thought for Park, he'd be like fringe top 15 material at a certain point. Like, you're fighting guys like Gregory Rodriguez. You're having a tough competitive fight. You get caught by a couple shots and then Rodriguez unloads. But the wins that Park has in the UFC tenure, Marc-Andre Barrio, John Phillips, Stefan Chukwe, and he's getting good wins. He beats Eric Anders his last time out. Is it the control time for Anders? Is it the shots on the feet for Park that gets the win? It is a split there. The loss to Anthony Hernandez, the loss to Gregory Rodriguez. Andrew Bonifaz with the inside joke of Holmes has a rib injury. So Andrew's fading. Holmes, when I look at this fight, Matt, who's more likely to get a finish? I have Joseph Holmes. I don't think that's controversial. No. You look at the knockout wins, the submission wins. And Kattar saying Jamie Pickett looked like Khabib against this guy. Park should win easily. You got to reel that one in. Holmes took that one on short notice. Holmes looked great in the first round. Holmes didn't look good round 2, round 3. Kind of blew his load in the first round. And you hear it a lot from people kind of building Holmes up. Fight on, looking for a fight in the UFC. Like, this guy really does get going quick. He's got a good pace. Yeah, early on in his career, but the last 3-4 fight sample from Holmes, he's a slow build. So if he gets off to a quick start against Park, he's able to establish that distance. I think he has better long range weapons. I really struggled there.
It happens.
Long range weapons. I think Holmes is the guy that you have to look out for a finish, but I do like Jin Young Park with the strength of schedule, with the fact that he throws much more volume in the cage, and I can go to the numbers there. If Park can do the inside-outside like he has against some bigger opponents, I think Park can get the win here.
I do worry about the size difference, though. I think that's a good point that's been brought up in the comment section a few times. Holmes is a big fighter for this weight division. I think it will be interesting to see if Park can get on the inside of his range, because I agree with you. He is a steadier fighter, but if Holmes can keep this fight at distance, threaten with some of his wrestling, I could see him having a lot of success, but I do agree with you in the overall pick. This is a weird fight. I think this could be a very entertaining fight for the fans, and if it is, I think our prediction might be right. I do favor Park in that type of a fight, but I could see this fight being a bit of a bore, and you hate to say that about a fight, but still, if Holmes is able to get the win, I do see a lot of wrestling. I see him really wearing on Park with his physicality, but it should be an interesting fight.
And Park has good offensive wrestling, but he's shown shaky defensive wrestling in certain fights. And the other thing about Jin Young Park, he was able to defend all the Anders takedowns. There were a lot of them in the third round his last time out. But number 8 all-time in middleweight strikes landed per minute at 5.14. Number 6 all-time in middleweight at takedown accuracy, 55% there. And if we have a look at the odds in the matchup, Holmes is the underdog at a plus 185, open plus 195, so not a ton of action. Jin Young Park open minus 230, and he's still about there. Michigonian, the Iron Turtle, is super durable and comes on late to win. We have a look at the total votes. Fight Night picks 59% on Jin Young Park, so a lot of people going with Holmes in this one, but both of us going with Park here.
Yeah, should be a good fight though.
Should be a good fight, Matt. A fight that I don't know how good it's going to be. Marcos Rogerio de Lima taking on
this one too.
Andrei Arlovski. We were split on this one. Matt, you might like the fact that de Lima came in 20 pounds heavier than Andrei Arlovski here. So
I do.
If he's able to get a takedown, if he's able to impose his will, we'll see how that goes. I don't like the added weight for the fact that Marcos Rogerio de Lima at 205 looked halfway fleet of foot. Like, he'd come in.
When he weighed in at like 211 pounds at 205, you mean?
Yeah, 210.5. He would, he was bouncy. Obviously, the Muay Thai out of Marcos Rogerio de Lima. The reason why I like Arlovski in this is obviously the refined boxing. The movement on the feet out of a 43-year-old. He doesn't look like the ghost of his former self. So, for that reason, I do like Arlovski. Daniel Espinosa is taking Arlovski. VT saying Father Time has to catch Arlovski sometime. And he did 6 years ago.
And Arlovski in this late career run has beaten better fighters than de Lima. I can openly admit that, even though my pick is Rogerio de Lima in the matchup. I just think at a certain point, Arlovski is going to get caught by a big shot. And I look at the added weight on de Lima as this. You might as well play the extremes, because you're not winning a decision anyways. You're probably not even going to be able to take him down anyways. So you might as well use your Muay Thai. Try to be explosive early on in the fight, similar to what his game plan was against Ben Rothwell. Because again, I didn't think there was a snowball's chance in hell that de Lima was going to be able to knock out Ben Rothwell, a guy known for his durability. Big Ben Rothwell is his nickname. And in Arlovski, a guy who has not been as durable as, some other guys in the past, I just think de Lima's going to be able to catch his chin at a certain point.
Malone Hart hitting up a giant super chat this weekend. Sorry for
Hart.
Joining in late. There are 3 things in life that are certain: death, taxes, and fight night picks. Certainly appreciate that. Malone, Hart.
Thank you, Malone.
So Matt going with DeLima and Clay saying DeLima, TKO, or Arlovski by decision. That's
exactly, and I think we both admit that.
Yeah, exactly. And Marcos Rogerio DeLima, for me, I look at him open minus 131, minus 255. Bappa, what are we doing here?
My blood, but
Arlovski open plus 111. He's a plus 204. So I don't know. All right, let's look at the votes at Fight Night Picks. 51% Arlovski, 49% DeLima. So the Fight
close one.
The Fight Night Picks
like
fans having it close. The people that are putting their hard-earned cash on unranked heavyweights that are like close to 40 and above 40, like, why would you do that?
But the thing is, even if DeLima wins by first round knockout, it's not like I'm going to take some victory lap. Like, it's still a close fight, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
even if that's what the result is.
Here's Sergey Spivak next. Enjoy.
Oh, and then you get mopped. Like, there is kind of just these unranked heavyweights kind of out there in
and
a
he's
pool.
ranked now.
Who, DeLima?
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
sorry, Spivak.
Oh, that's what I mean. I just mean with this fight between Arlovski and DeLima, there's just sort of a pool of like 20 unranked heavyweights where anybody could beat anybody on any given day. And then you have the ranked fighters in the division, and they do seem to be head and shoulders above the rest. So I'm DeLima in this fight. Hopefully it's a fun matchup between two Asian guys in the heavyweight division, but it's just weird seeing Andrei Arlovski still be kind of relevant in the division after he went on that big losing streak against all those really well-known fighters. Lost to Stipe, Josh Barnett, Francis. Like, everyone remembers that streak. He's been able to reinvent himself, but normally when you reinvent yourself, you'll go on like a 3-4 fight streak, and then once you start to lose again, it's kind of over. And Arlovski's really been able to stretch his career out.
Bartholomew saying Spivak versus Lewis coming up. I think that poster is actually kind of cool, even though it's a main event that like some people can rally around, but there's going to be people that are like, what, Sergey Spivak?
Is Lewis completely past his prime is the real question.
That's a tough one, Matt. Our next fight, this one's at middleweight. Over 300 tuning in on a nice Saturday afternoon, getting ready for Kattar and Allen. The likes are appreciated. Always good banter over there in the comments section. Phil Hawes taking on Dolidze. There seems to be two split camps here. Now, Matt, the Georgian MMA fans, they always show up for their guys and gals, and they're here for Roman Dolidze this weekend. We know him. I mean, FILA World Grappling Champion, ADCC Oceania and Asian Champion. Dolidze in the UFC, it's either one thing or the other. And that's kind of it. Like, I know he has only one loss.
Song by The Fix?
On his way. I said one way or the other. But you look at it, he loses to Trevin Giles in the striking. He beats John Allen by majority decision. The other wins are great. The Kyle Dawkins win that he had his last time out, he looked amazing. Clay saying, how about the giant size difference? I picked Hawes, but I'm seriously reconsidering. VT, Hawes is so vicious in the beginning. And Till the Next Life saying, should be a co-main event. I don't know why this is below Fremd versus Gore. I bet they expect more of a finish there than they do in this one. I don't know. Like, two guys fighting for their jobs. Let's put them way up there. Prince Vegeta-san saying former 205-pounder as well. And for Dolidze, the former WWFC 205-pound champ. I don't love the weight cut. I know he looked great against Kyle Dawkins last time out really early on, but I think if Dolidze wins, it's got to be, you know, that under 1.5 rounds for Dolidze. I don't see him winning a decision here, and I like the wrestling out of Phil Hawes, although wrestling leads itself to getting submitted, but I don't really necessarily think it does in this matchup.
Phil Hawes looks like he did against Duran Win. This fight's not going to last very long. He put on the beatdown of the year his last time out. Now, for Hawes, it is weird, because he does leave you wanting more a lot of the times when he is in there. We know what his strikes are. You see it in some of the flashes in some of his fights.
And everybody going with Dolidze, it seems, over there in the comments.
I have seen a lot of people this week. That's what I was going to mention. I know we both had Hawes at the start of the week. I don't know if you've changed your opinion. I haven't. I'm still going with Hawes. But I have seen a lot of people side with Roman Dolidze, citing the size advantage he does have. Maybe he's able to put on the wrestling shoes, go out there and try to offensively grapple with Hawes a little bit. And that would be interesting to see if he does use that kind of a game plan. I just think on the feet, Hawes is quite a bit more technical with his striking. He does hold his hands up, even though I don't love his chin if he does get hit clean. Unless Roman Dolidze is able to land either a really nice shot in the clinch, where he doesn't really have to worry about the accuracy of his shots, because that's the problem with Dolidze. It's a lot of winging shots on the outside, where if they land, it's great. But the same thing on the inside, too. His clinch shots are really effective, but he's just sort of throwing as hard as he can, and if it lands, it's going to be really effective. If it doesn't, he is probably going to get tired as the fight goes on. So I do like Phil Hawes, but I think this is going to be a really good fight. I do. I think this is going to be in the running for fight of the night by the time it's all said and done.
Well, when you do have a look at this one, you do consider the odds in the fight. Phil Hawes still the favorite here, but the line's been going down on Hawes as it loads for me. So I'll have a look at the total votes on the total votes on Instagram. It's just a tough one here. 56% going with Hawes, 44% with Roman Dolidze.
Pretty close.
Hawes about a minus 175 favorite, plus 155 for Dolidze. So a lot of chat about the old baseball, and geez, wouldn't it be something if Dusty Baker's able to get that win over there with his surgical gloves? But yeah, for me, I've got Phil Hawes here. I do like the long-range striking. I didn't love it against Chris Curtis, that short-notice knockout loss. Obviously, you saw the win the last time there against one tricky Daron Wynn. He's had a rough go in the UFC. GPB10, new subscriber here. I barely came across your channel, and you guys are awesome.
Thank you.
You got another viewer in me.
You're pretty awesome, too.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. And Doughboy Paul, no Dusty Baker, ex-Giant. Remember that time that
Dusty Baker invented the high five, guys. Show some respect.
That time when his kid ran out and almost got slammed into at home plate and got picked up, the old Aubrey Huff play. Matt, our next fight, this is at 205. We have Dustin Jacoby taking on Khalil Rountree Jr. And just like I said, Dolidze versus Hawes, everybody's all overtaking Roman Dolidze. In this fight, they're not about taking Dustin Jacoby. They're all about taking Khalil Rountree. So I'll start off here and I'll say the votes on this one, 72%. The quiet ones over on the Instagram, 71% now on Dustin Jacoby. I'm a Wayne Kerr with the super chat. Let's get into it. I think Hawes is a solid pick. His striking is just nasty.
Hawes got a lot better.
Jaden is saying my sleeper for fight of the night right here. And Chris McDowell, yeah, I got Jacoby all day, baby. We spam, and also a Dodger fan here. Man, they spent so much money and they just lost. And now they're talking about maybe putting Noel Mookie Betts back at second base.
Ooh.
Signing Aaron Judge. How do you feel about that?
I don't think they will. They don't have enough money.
Don't think about that one. Any action on Paul versus Silva? No, but I want Anderson Silva to win.
To the people who think this could be a fight of the night, they're right. It could be a fight of the night. These are two very exciting fighters. If you think it is going to be a back and forth fight, though, you're probably going to favor Dustin Jacoby, I would imagine, because if both guys are expending a lot of energy, especially early on in the fight, if neither guy gets finished and it goes late, well, I definitely favor the work rate, the activity, the accuracy of Jacoby a lot more than I do Khalil Rountree Jr. Because for Rountree Jr., it is a case of a lot of peaks and valleys with his output. We know how explosive he is. We know how powerful he is. When he does land those big, powerful hooks, they do have damaging effects on his opponents. But the thing is, he'll go minutes without landing anything effective in a fight. And it does feel like watching the Golden State Warriors. Like, when everybody was hurt that one year, it was, hey, it's feast or famine. They're not going to score for like 6 minutes, and then they'll hit 4 threes in a row and make things interesting. For Rountree, that is his offense. If he does land, it's going to look really good. I just think against a guy like Jacoby, who's a lot more technical, who's a lot steadier too with his strikes, I think he is going to check those leg kicks. I think he is going to be able to move forward with combinations. And I think that's the important thing. I think both guys share sort of big picture skills, but I think when you sort of zoom in a little bit more, I just think Jacoby's a little bit more technical.
No, I mean, you got to have a look in the chat. So Prediction Shark and Marshall Anderson Jr., Rountree going to knock him out, and then Rountree wins by knockout 1.5 under. If you do look at Rowntree's last 2 times out, you consider it Modestas Bukauskas. He's got a big fight coming up in Cage Warriors. The big win that he had against Carl Robertson, those are definitely big wins, but consider it for Dustin Jacoby. And to back up the point, I mean, for Jacoby, comes back into the UFC just about 2 years ago, 6-0-1. The 0-1, the draw that he has, Iwan Kutsalaba is that fight.
You may have heard of him.
I thought he lost to Max Grecian. The point is, for Jacoby, he can struggle sometimes in the first round, finding his range. He gets kind of caught deer in the headlights, and there will be points where Jacoby kind of freezes up, and that's a big point to win. So if you do like Rountree, that is kind of a point that you could throw out there. But you do consider the numbers. 5.27 strikes landed per minute to 3.77 absorbed for Jacoby over his 6-0-1 plus his 0-2 start, the Chris Camozzi, the fight that he had against, who was it, Clifford Starks. And then for Rountree, he's 4-4 in the UFC since he had that run on Ultimate Fighter. 3.34 to 3.55, and his accuracy isn't very hard. So you do consider it for Rountree. I don't love the activity. I do like the mean streak, the Syndicate MMA connection out of his last 2 fights. The leg kicks have been really good for Rountree. He is an underdog, so you can get him at a plus 150. For Jacoby, minus 180. So consider it both ways. I do like the action, the work rate out of Dustin Jacoby, and he's now ranked 13th in the division. Surprised he isn't getting a ranked opponent, but I'm sure nobody's just looking at their phone going, wow.
Oh, I'd love to fight this.
Fight opportunity against Dustin Jacoby? Send me the contract. So Rountree gets a great opportunity to crack the ranks. I like Jacoby here, but yeah, again, Maybe you do like Rountree and wake up the Yuma. Can I ask for who you got in Jake Paul versus Silva? I don't have an official pick. I want Anderson Silva to win as a fan of boxing, but I don't have an official pick there.
I'm cheering for Anderson Silva like there's no tomorrow. I hope that old man wins, but the problem is he's, 47? Like, Anderson Silva's up there.
He's not
young. Not at all. So, don't expect him to win.
2 years ago, he fought Uriah Hall on Halloween, so that was a fight. So both of us going with Dustin Jacoby. A fight at middleweight that has no bearing on anything. Josh Fremd taking on Tresen Gore. You folks beat us black and blue, saying that Tresen Gore was going to win.
He could.
He was going to be great. He was going to go 4-0, and now he's 0-2 in the UFC. And it just hasn't worked out all that well for Tresen Gore. Now, we've seen him unload with his hands a little bit. We saw it in the Brundage fight before he got caught. We've seen offensive wrestling skills. We've seen Tresen Gore look really good on The Ultimate Fighter, but not in the UFC. And for Josh Fremd, we've seen him look really good with LFA, but not in the UFC. Exactly. Only in glimpses, just like Tresen Gore. Like, we saw glimpses where he was taking on your man, Fluffy Hernandez. He had a couple of good exchanges. He came in on really short notice in that fight, and that's what has to be said. Like, in that one, it was 11 days notice was what he took that fight on. So both these guys have had a hard time. If Gore is able to blitz up against, a guy like Josh Fremd, Gregory Rodriguez was able to do it. It's not outside of the realm of possibility. I like the well-roundedness and the skill set out of Josh Fremd in this fight, but my God, if you're putting action on this one,
don't.
You're probably putting action on every single fight. That's what you're about.
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything. Popping popcorn.
People probably call you the Greek, and your teeth are probably pearly white.
He had a good run at the end of Contender Series.
He did. Good for him. The train got back on the tracks. I like Josh Fremd in this matchup just because I don't have an overall great view of either guy and overall what their ceiling could be. For Gore, I think there is a good fighter kind of trapped in there somewhere, but it really is a case of I'll believe in it once I do see it. So until Gore does go out there and have an impressive performance, it is going to be really difficult to predict him to go out there and look good. So maybe Gore is able to win this fight. I'm not saying he can't. This is a very winnable matchup. I just think Fremd is the safer pick in this fight. Like we say a lot. Like, oh, do you love the odds? Do you love the pick? Do you like the fighters involved? No. But at the end of the day, we're only trying to get one more fight right on in the description on these videos. So I like Fremd in this fight, but I don't think either guy's going to go on and challenge for the title sometime soon.
No, the money's come on Tresen Gore.
If you're coming on, come on.
Josh Fremd opened a -220, is a -163. If you look at it for Tresen Gore, opened up a +185, he's +135. So the money is coming in there. We've got a spammer in the chat, so we got to kick them out, and then we will continue to go on with our next fight, Matt, because we're right up near the top. Waldo Cortes-Acosta versus Jared Vanderaa, the Dana White Contender Series. Freeze, is it on for Cortes-Acosta? Not for me, I'll tell you that much. You look at it for Vanderaa, I mean, it's just been a slippery slope. And there's a couple of fights in the losing streak that you could point to and you could say, listen, like, he should have won that one. I thought he beat Andrei Arlovski, and his last time out against Chase Sherman, he was winning up until he got into that combination, that flurry that ended up finishing him. And I know you might say, well, Craig, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you do go back and watch it, Vanderaa was establishing distance, and then Chase Sherman just kind of stepped through his punches because there wasn't a lot of force behind them, and he established his own knockout win. So I do look at this one. Waldo Cortes-Acosta, the boxing career that is in his back pocket, undefeated, the win that he has over Thomas Peterson is the one that has me convinced that he can get the win. I see a lot of people talking about, the odds are a little bit swayed. This goes back to the last fight, Fremd versus Gore. I want to get a pick right. I'm going with Cortes-Acosta. If Vanderaa goes out there and wrestles like he did when he was fighting with the UFC, when he was fighting on the regional scene, Vanderaa can beat Cortes-Acosta. Cortes-Acosta doesn't have great takedown defense. If it's purely a striking match like all of the recent Vanderaa fights, Cortes-Acosta, I think, will win.
Without a doubt, if it's just a striking match. And that's the thing. It is hard to have confidence in guys coming into the UFC fresh off Contender Series because you don't have a good gauge for their level of competition, really. You've only really had that one snapshot. Now, yes, we've gone back and watched a lot of the films getting ready for this past season of Contender Series, but for the most part, it is very difficult to gauge the talent of a lot of these fighters. But for Cortes-Acosta, he's fighting Jared Vanderaa, and it's no disrespect to Jared Vanderaa, but we don't necessarily look at Vanderaa and think, wow, he's going to have competitive fights against people who are in the rankings or even borderline in the rankings. And like you said, does Vanderaa have a clear skill set that can have success in this matchup? Of course he can. He could go out there and use his offensive wrestling and have success with that, But if it talks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And for Jared Vanderaa, we haven't really seen that version of him as of late. And I do think that Cortes-Acosta is levels above him in the striking. I don't think it's a level. I don't think it's 2 levels. I think it's like LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5. I think Cortes-Acosta really is that next level striker in the heavyweight division. But I think you bring up a good point too. That does sort of reinforce both of our prediction. Vanderaa is a rare heavyweight where he is a big guy, but he doesn't have a lot of power in the division. And guys, if they don't respect his punching power, do have a tendency to kind of walk through the pitter-patter he does tend to throw on the feet, and they can land their own power shots. So I do like Cortes-Acosta.
Like, a lot of people are talking about it. Vanderaa got the high school wrestling chops in his back pocket. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Tom Galecchio and Big Daddy Joe Stevenson. But if I haven't seen it, I can't pick it. So that's why I'm just making a pick on the fight. Don't necessarily love the odds on this one. There's not a whole lot of, whole lot going on today. But if you do look at it for Cortes-Acosta, he's just about a -210. For Vanderaa, +175. And if we do have a look at Fight Night picks for the total votes on this one, 83% going with Cortes-Acosta, 17% going with Vanderaa. So if you like Vanderaa, you let us know. But I don't, so that's the way that it's going. And we'll move on to the next one. And for Cortes-Acosta, I do have this to say. Like, we say striking is good, and it is very good for heavyweight MMA. Defensively, I mean, it can be a little rock'em sock'em at times. I don't see Cortes-Acosta that's going to go, as a guy that's going to go on like a Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gahn type of run.
Do you look at him kind of like an Augusto Sakai, but without the experience?
It's going to, like... no, like Biggie Boy, but not that far.
Okay.
Like Chris Dawkins. I think he's going to go on a Chris Dawkins type of run. There might be some losses here and there, but I do think it'll be fun while it lasts. Co-main event.
I love this fight.
Timur Means. Old Timur Means. They call him the Dirty Bird. And listen, I mean, it's just like Philadelphia Collins and Jacob. That was the Dirty Burger. But if you do look at it for Tim Means, he changed his life around as a young man. And then he became a professional fighter. And for Means, he's been in the UFC for a very long time. I think this might pick up a fight of the night bonus. He's taking on Max Griffin, who has a split decision loss his last time out to a guy who's in the co-main event of next weekend's card, Neil Magny, taking on Dana Rodriguez. Max Griffin, you look at this guy, he's going to continue to pressure forward. He's going to stand at an awkward angle. He's going to box. He's got a pretty darn good chin. The Alex Morono fight is one of my favorite fights to go back and watch. And for Tim Means, he's got a lot of those favorite fights to go back and watch. But I look at this one, Matt, as Means was halfway competitive with Kevin Holland until the volume and the power started to win out. And that's why I like I like Max Griffin for that reason in this one. Somebody wanted to see us get up to 100 likes, and I chug a Molson. I've got a lot to do today, and we're in the late afternoon, so I'm not going to chug Molsons for your enjoyment.
Do you have one on hand? I'll do it.
No, I've got a Pure North.
That's too bad.
That's what I've got.
I think this is an incredibly fun fight. Now, both guys, again, I can't stress this enough. Both guys are in the same stage of their career, so I don't think one guy has a lot more to fight for than the other. And I know motivation doesn't always mean everything, but you're not looking at this as, it's kind of like a gatekeeper fight for either guy involved. Again, this is just a, hey, if you win this, we're going to give you another fun matchup at 170. You might get a Brian Barberena, you might get a Robbie Lawler, just guys in that realm who are going to offer you fun matchups that are going to result in fight of the night style of fights. I just think Tim Means is a little bit more technical on the feet, and I like his volume a little bit more. Now, if Max Griffin goes out there, hits him with a 1-2, drops him on the feet, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever because, again, we put this in the fight of the night screen not because we think it's going to be a one-sided beatdown one way or the other, but because it's going to be a competitive fight. I think Griffin does have more power in his hands, so if Means is finding himself walking into a lot of the exchanges, he might walk into a big shot and hurt himself, but I think that if he is able to find his way into the exchanges, use his elbows, use his volume, go to the body a lot, I do think that is a path for Tim Means to have a lot of success. I'll be curious to see who goes to the wrestling first, though, because I'd classify both these guys as similar grapplers, if you will.
Yeah.
Tim Means has decent defensive submissions. He's not a scrub on the mat by any means. Again, if you're a really good offensive grappler, you can get the better of him. I vividly remember saying before the Kevin Holland fight, Kevin Holland's going to win this fight by submission, and luckily he did, so I can look smart for once. But Means and Griffin are both going to use their grappling as a plan B. Only expect them to shoot for takedowns if things on the feet aren't necessarily going great for them. Maybe Griffin could go for an offensive takedown near the end of a round to try to seal it if the round is very very close, but I think this is going to be a really competitive fight between two guys who, again, are they fighting to get a ranked opponent next? Probably not, but it's going to be a fun fight.
I think they might be. I mean,
they could, you're right.
You just consider it. Well, they were both on win streaks before they lost their last fight. Means fought Holland, previously ranked in the top 5 at middleweight. And then you had Mr. Max Griffin taking on Mr. Neil Magny, and people are talking about it. I mean, what are you looking at my gut for? I mean, Bubbles was just looking at it. Minus 150 for Griffin at open, minus 200 right now. And for Tim Means, open to plus 130 is plus 163. We have a look at Fight Night picks for the total votes. Tom hanging out over there in the chat. MMA Junkie's own, so shouts to you. 68% going with Max Griffin to get the win. You're going with a lot more underdogs than you normally do on this card.
I've got the Dirty Bird in this matchup. Again, I think this is a really fun fight. I don't really know who's going to win. I think it is very 50-50 just because they're going to fight at each other's preferred range. That's very rare. Normally you want to fight the fight at your preferred range and not your opponent's, but both guys are so close, especially on the feet, that I think it's going to be a great fight, but I do have Means.
Blown Heart with another super chat over there. If you shotgun a beer on video, I'm going to judge you. I'm gonna judge you hard. Yeah, we did make it up to 100 likes, but again, there's so much to do today. I gotta get ready. If you guys want a halfway competent preview of the card that's coming up next weekend,
I think one beer is gonna kill you.
I mean, there's a lot to do today, Matt. Our main event, you have Calvin Kattar taking on Arnold Allen. And we have a look at the total votes right there. I mean, that says it all. 55% here going with Kattar to 45% with Arnold Allen over at Fight Night Picks on Instagram. Look at that. I mean, you guys
love to see it.
You can see it, kind of. There's a little bit of glare, but it's 50-50 right there. So people are split. Matt can't hold in the sneeze, nor should you. I mean, you don't want to you don't want to screw up the old baddie. But you have a look at this one, Matt. So the fan vote, it is very close. We need to hear from you over there in that chat. Who do you have in this matchup? Because for Kattar, he lost to Josh Emmett his last time out. It was a very close fight. It was controversial. We can go through it. We can talk about it till the cows come home. But for Arnold Allen, his finish wasn't very controversial at all. His win over Dan Hooker was that win. Now you get your first main event, first test with 5 rounds. His dad scares the living heck out of me.
As he should.
And for Allen, this is to me, Dan Hooker's a big-name opponent. Sadiq Yusuf's a big-name opponent. Calvin Kattar's that big-name opponent because Kattar's fighting his 5th main event in a row. And this is the opportunity to cement yourself as, okay, maybe you don't get the title shot against, is it Volkanovski? Is it going to be Volkanovski? Is it a Yair Rodriguez, a Brian Ortega? Is it somebody of that ilk next?
And all the guys you mentioned are guys that you don't think Arnold Allen's going to beat. Let's just be completely honest. No one really thought Allen would reach this point in the division because at least early on he was thought of as kind of a boring fighter. He's sound defensively, he's a good wrestler, he's good in the clinch. He's a good outside fighter who can pick you apart with his kicks and his jabs. But as he has progressed up the division, he has become a more aggressive fighter. And it'll be really interesting to see because if he does wait on the back foot against a guy like Calvin Kattar, that's when Kattar will be able to pepper him with his combinations, use his jab, really be able to fight the fight under his terms. But on the flip side, Arnold Allen is the better kicker in this matchup. For as good as the striking of Calvin Kattar is, and he is a great striker, he's not a kick-heavy fighter. He'll throw some inside leg kicks, throw some outside leg kicks. He'll go to the body maybe once a round, and maybe once a round, but for the most part, he is very much a boxer. With Arnold Allen, a 3-level striker with his kicks, goes to the body, goes to the legs, and to the head. I've had a really hard time with this fight, though, all week long, especially with our early on predictions. I think I staggered my pick for 7 minutes at the end of the video, it felt like.
I swore. I got
You
mad.
did. You got really upset because that happens. And the thing is, I do think Calvin Kattar is the steadier fighter in this matchup. We've seen him fight in 5-round fights before. We know how good he is in round 1 and in round 5. He's a very similar fighter in both of those rounds now. When you're fighting Max Holloway, it's tough to look really good in the 5th round, but I do think Kattar has probably the better cardio in this matchup. Maybe not the better cardio, but I trust his cardio a lot more in this matchup. And that's why I do think Arnold Allen is going to try to have a lot of success early in the matchup. I expect him to go to the legs a lot like Renato Moicano did in his fight against Calvin Kattar. And that's the thing. That fight was a long time ago, but Allen can use a lot of the same offensive weapons that Moicano would use all those years ago. So again, I can see paths to victories for both guys, but I do still have Calvin Kattar.
I'm a Wayne Kerr. I'll do the Sabu or was it the Sandman type of thing? There you go. You get that out of me. No beers today. That one kind of hurt.
I don't have any on me, or I would, guys.
But in this matchup, it is a commentary of, as Anna A says, and she did earlier on in the chat early this weekend in the comment section, autocorrecting Calvin Karate Kattar. That has to be his nickname, but it really is the boxing that takes over. So do I like The low output with the power of Arnold Allen, the possibility of the leg kicks, and the unknown of the takedowns versus Calvin Kattar with sound takedown defense, good level of volume, 5-round cardio, and as was mentioned by Clay, hasn't been finished in that fight against Josh Emmett. That was the likely path to victory for him. Remember that
big shots.
Remember that Michael Johnson fight or the Max Holloway fight where the volume was disgusting and it skewed Kattar's career numbers with the volume to be a net negative. But if you look at it for Kattar, whether he's favored, whether he's not, he is a slight underdog. The odds are going to be about a plus 105 Kattar, minus 115 for Arnold Allen. So again, there are a lot of people that might really like Allen in the matchup. And I'm a Wayne Kerr. I do appreciate the super chat. Nonetheless, saying worth a shot. Sabu is a G. For me, I like Kattar with the volume, and I know, do you love 34-year-olds at featherweight? Well, for some reason, I love Guido Canetti at 135.
He's taking a lot of damage.
And Mr. D. Silva down in these lower weight classes. But yeah, he does take a lot of damage. We'll see how it mixes up in the play, but I do like Kattar in the matchup.
So do I, but again, I think this is going to be fight of the night without a doubt. And again, I don't think it's going to be that because it's going to be a one-sided fight for Calvin Kattar. I think Arnold Allen's going to be able to take some big shots in this fight, respond with his own. I just do favor the volume of Kattar.
So the super chats have been great. Last weekend, it's worth noting, Question Mark Kicks was one of the top 3 we've ever had in this channel's history. It absolutely popped off with UFC 280, and I switched a pick and I got it wrong. The week before I switched a pick, I got it wrong.
Yeah.
Not switching any picks this week. We're going to see how that one plays out. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad. Donnie Dime saying Craig gave himself hematoma like a Mark Hominick back at Rogers Center. But Matt, we'll flip it back on. Christian Rodriguez taking on Weems. I'm going to be going with Rodriguez.
I also have Rodriguez in this fight.
All right. Mota versus Durden. I'm going Mota, but you're not.
No, I have Durden, but again, this should be a fun fight. It is kind of a learning fight for both guys, because it'll separate them from just being, like, entry-level fighters, you know what I mean? And put them kind of into the general pool of an unranked fighter.
All right, we've got Hooper versus Garcia. I have Hooper, but I don't like the odds.
A volatile matchup if ever there was one. Both guys could win seemingly any which way, but I do have Hooper.
Remember the Steven Peterson fight? It wasn't that long ago. You anticipate Hooper's gotten better since then. Holmes versus Park, going with Jin Young Park here.
Something you've never said outside of just me to anybody is, remember that Steven Peterson fight? I also have Park in this fight. Just no. People be like, no, of course not, Craig. Go make some friends.
Andrei Arlovski taking on Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Matt liking that thickness with an extra 20 lbs, but I've got Andrei Arlovski here.
A fight that's not going to be close either way. Let's just call it how it is. Like a close fight in general from a prediction point of view, because it is so one way or the other, but it's going to be one way or the other. I just like de Lima with his power.
When you used to be 210 pounds at 205 pounds, what do you do to get to like 261? Is it just like, I don't know, you're just eating brisket every day?
Like, I'm the same height as de Lima, but he weighs like 100 pounds more than me. That's wild.
That's wild. Wild. Hawes versus Dolidze, going with Philadelphia, Phil Hawes. But a lot of people have Dolidze. Thank you, Branch Above.
You would agree with me, though. One of the better fights in the card.
Yeah, and this is a really close one. Like, if we do consider it, the odds are skewed more towards Phil Hawes at a minus 175. I think they should be closer, so I do think that there's value there on Dolidze. But I will go with Hawes in the matchup, and I'm really eager to see what people are saying. We get a super chat. What are your thoughts on the fight decision in Sean O'Malley last weekend? Live on the channel as we were watching it. We were here for the sidekick. I thought Sean O'Malley won, which is apparently controversial, but everybody there on Twitter that said Petr Yan won, they also said, like, in parentheses, this is a very close fight. So I thought O'Malley won.
This is how I look at every fight and every controversial decision. I'm going to be honest. I think like 5% of all fights, it's a very small percentage, but it is a percent, could go either way. Like, there's that much gray area in the rule set that could allow a fight to be judged either way. The way I looked at that fight was round 2 was clear for Petr Yan. Yeah. Round 1 was very close, could have gone either way, and round 3 was really close, could have gone either way. So, if that's how I think the fight goes, it means that it opens up the door for 30-27 Petr Yan, which sounds really one-sided, but 2 close rounds, one obvious one, but it also opens up the door for 29-28 Sean O'Malley. So, I disagreed with the decision in that I thought Petr Yan had won the fight, but I don't disagree in that Sean O'Malley could have. Like, it was that close, so I don't disagree with it.
All right, Matt, we'll move forward. We have Jacoby versus Rountree. The fans on Fight Night Picks on the Instagram in the story, overwhelmingly with Jacoby. Seen a lot of commentary on Rountree, especially by finish. I like Jacoby, but if he goes deer in the headlights in the first round, it could be an opportunity for the big time Rountree win.
I remember back when Rountree fought Tyson Pedro. It was a debut for both of them way back when. Rountree looked really good, dropped Pedro, but immediately got submitted.
The follow-up there saying, thanks, sorry. You don't have to be sorry for anything. We appreciate the super chat. It was a good question. If you missed the sidekick, that's fair. I mean, people have stuff to do.
Just, you're right, though. Rountree has the type of power to where if you do tense up for any moment, especially early on, he could knock you out, but I think Jacoby's a little bit more technical.
All right, Matt. So we look at the next fight. We have Josh Fremd versus Tresen Gore. I guess Fremd. Like, flip a coin, pick a fighter. I have Fremd. More well-rounded skill set. I've seen it more recently. Angel, or Angel, saying, I'm with you, Craig, that the O'Malley fight, also much love. Keep putting out the great content.
Thank you.
Thank you for the super chat. It's been a great run for the super chats recently. But yeah, in this matchup, Matt, if Gore is able to just flip the switch like he did with Tiki Ghostin in his corner with Ortega over on The Ultimate Fighter, Gore can get the win. But I haven't seen it in a while. I got to see it again.
Exactly. So if he looks really good in this fight, maybe we will change our opinion of him moving forward. But until we do see it, I do have Josh Fremd in this matchup. At least I know that in some points he does look really good. But this fight to me is if like the Lakers needed one more spot on the roster. So they got LiAngelo Ball and like Isaiah Thomas to do a one-on-one. And they were like, hey guys, the winner can lose every game of the regular season.
This is one where you get every Nelson Muntz in the crowd if you get it wrong. Ha-ha. But it's just water off a duck's back. The next fight, Matt, to the co-main event. Waldo Cortes-Acosta taking on Jared Vanderaa. Going with the man out of the DR, it's Cortes-Acosta.
I also have Cortes-Acosta. Again, it is hard to have confidence in someone making their debut coming off Contender Series, but Jared Vanderaa isn't the highest level of opponent, if that is fair to say, and that's why I have Cortes-Acosta.
All right, Matt. Expecting that 4-fight losing streak to go to a 5-fight losing streak.
You hate to say it.
From 12-9 to 12-10. Tim Means taking on Max Griffin. Apparently, I have the favorite. I've got Max Griffin. His nickname's Pain to inflict such on the Dirty Bird. The Dirty Bird.
Great fight between two guys who aren't going to fight in the top 15, I don't think. Maybe they could, you're right. Like, at 115, there are some of those guys who are still trying to prove themselves, working their way up the rankings. So, I do think the winner of this fight is probably going to find themselves in one of those type of matchups next. But, again, they're going to maintain their relevancy in the division. I have Tim Means, but it should be a great fight.
Did you say at 115?
Oh, did I? Sorry, at 170, not at 115.
Would you want men's strawweight fights in the UFC? They're fun with one championship.
Not really. I don't even watch one championship, though, and I'm honest about that.
Calvin Kattar taking on Arnold Allen in the main event, going with the volume, the experience out of the older guy here, out of the New England cartel, going with Calvin Kattar in this fight. But I'm really looking forward to seeing if Arnold Allen's one of those guys that can now solve the riddle that's Calvin Kattar. Because I think that's what Kattar is. He's a riddle before you face off against the champ or the #1 contender.
Would you agree with me? So Calvin Kattar's either the best good fighter or the worst great fighter in the division. He is sort of the gatekeeper to the elite of the elite. And I think there's an opportunity, rare as it is, to where Arnold Allen could lose this fight, but still gain a lot of stock in a lot of fans' minds, I think. A lot of people remember him for the Dan Hooker knockout win. He looked great in that fight, but it was so short that we didn't really learn a lot about Arnold Allen in the type of 5-round fight that we're going to this afternoon. So I think if Allen loses a 5-round decision where he loses 3 rounds to 2, so Kattar goes out there, wins the unanimous, but it's a close fight, I think Arnold Allen might still be able to go out there and get some of those bigger name opponents moving forward. Guys like Giga Chikadze. I can see a rematch with Sadiq Youssef down the line. Maybe that could be another fun one, but I do still have Calvin Kattar in what should be an incredible fight.
Well, you do look at this one. Ultimate expert analyst loves hitting up the old chat, talking about Kattar breaking his nose, and that's definitely true. But you talk about Arnold Allen gaining stock, definitely gets a big-time opportunity in his first main event. For Josh Emmett, beat Calvin Kattar's last time out. You hear the crickets, you hear the fan out of my computer. Like, that's what we're hearing from Josh Emmett right now, which is a shame, and not a lot of people have rallied around that win for
him. And the thing about 145 is it would just be nice to see more activity out of the top 10 fighters, because like I said, other than Volkanovski, who right now is pound for pound #1, I think, in the sport, everybody else can beat everybody. It's a very dynamic division, and it's a very competitive division, so it would just be nice to see more of these top guys in against each other, because they haven't yet. It'd be great to see Arnold Allen against the Josh Emmetts of the world, and Yair Rodriguez even. Like, this division's just so stacked. It's always fun to have a 145 main event.
Well, enjoy the fights coming up today. I mean, you have Kattar versus Allen, Silva versus Paul. There's all different types of boxing that's out there. In Bellator, Mansour Barnaoui taking on Adam Piccolotti over in Italy. Italy. That should be a fun one. Mansour is definitely a great fighter, and it's his first fight in about 3 years, so I'm really looking forward to that one. And of course, next weekend, you have a big time main event, a co-main event, Rodriguez versus Lemos, Rodriguez versus Neil Magny. It should be a lot of fun on that card.
And we talk about this a lot, how in some divisions you have multiple fighters who have sort of a half claim to a title shot, right? It's, hey, I beat this guy in the top 6, top 5, why can't I fight for the title? Rodriguez and Lemos have both kind of found themselves in that position, so it is really fun to finally get two of those fighters fighting against each other, because I don't think there's much of an argument at all. Like, the winner of this fight is fighting for a UFC title next time out. Like, without a doubt, I would say Rodriguez has beat a lot of the other top women in the division, and for Lemos, she's really been built up as she's worked her way to the top, so I think if she is able to get a 5-round win over someone like Rodriguez, it is enough to get her that title shot.
I'm going to keep getting ready for that card. I really am looking forward to it. Hopefully you can check that one out. As you're on your way out the door, toss that like, and if you're not subscribed, there are a couple of new folks here. We really do appreciate you tuning in. The super chats are always appreciated. Rodriguez taking on Lemos next weekend. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.